and baseball in the spring, and worked as a lifeguard during the summers. The competitive spirit is a natural part of who I am. I don't like to lose, and death, my adversary, doesn't play fair. Death took Hannah from me, from all of us, too early. She was the most vibrant, joyful, loving woman I have ever known. I've been floundering ever since. Although I fought death, my enemy, from the day I became a doctor, it's why I became a doctor, I learned to understand it in a different, more complex way. I learned death can be a friend even while it's the enemy. As she lay dying, Hannah, who loved me so completely and knew me so well, showed me that ultimate truth. A year's time has given me the perspective to realize I did my wife a disservice. My biggest regret is that I refused to accept the fact that she was dying. As a result, I held on to her far longer than I should have. I refused to relinquish her when she was ready to leave me. Selfishly, I couldn't bear to let her go. Even when she'd drifted into unconsciousness, I sat by her bedside night and day, unable to believe that there wouldn't be a miracle. It's stupid. As a medical professional, I certainly know better. Yet I clung to her. Now I realize that my stubbornness, my unwillingness to release her to God, held back her spirit, tied her to earth, to me. When I recognized the futility of it all, when I saw what I was doing to Hannah's parents and to Richie, I knew I had to let her go. I left Hannah's room and got a hold of myself. I hadn't slept in days, hadn't eaten, nor had I shaved, which means I probably looked even more pathetic than I felt. I went back to our home, showered, forced down a bowl of soup, and slept for 3 uninterrupted hours. When I returned, the immediate family had gathered around her bedside. Hannah's heart rate had slowed, and it was only a matter of minutes. Then, just before she died, she opened her eyes, looked directly at me, and smiled. I held her hand and raised it to my lips as she closed her eyes and was gone. That last smile will stay with me forever. Every night as I press my head against the pillow, the final image in my mind is Hannah's farewell smile. "Hey, Michael, a beer?" Richie asked. He doesn't call me Mike. No one does. Even as a kid, I was never a Mike. Sure. My concentration wasn't on the game or on much of anything, really. Without glancing at the scoreboard, I couldn't have told you who was ahead. I went through the motions, jumped to my feet whenever Richie did. I shouted and made noise along with the rest of the crowd, but I didn't care about the game. I hadn't cared about anything for a long time, except my work. That had become my salvation. "How about dinner after the game?" Richie asked as he handed me a cold beer a few minutes later. I hesitated. All that awaited me was an empty house and my memories of Hannah. Sure. I didn't have much of an appetite, though. I rarely did these days. Great! He took a long swig of beer and turned back to the field. I hadn't done my brother-in-law any favors by agreeing to attend this game. These weren't cheap seats, either. Richie had paid big bucks for box seats behind home plate, and I'd basically ignored the entire game. I should have made an excuse and let him take someone else. But I didn't want to be alone. Not today. Every other day of the year, I was perfectly content with my own company. But not today. The game must have been over because almost before I was aware of it, people were leaving. "Great game," I said, making the effort. "We'd lost," Richie muttered. I hadn't been paying enough attention to notice. Richie slapped me on the back and headed out of the stadium. That was his way of telling me he understood. Half an hour later, we sat in a friendly sports bar not far from Safeco Field. I stared at the menu, wishing I could conjure up an appetite. Over the past year, I'd lost nearly 20 pounds. Food was a necessity, and that was the only reason I bothered. I usually ate on the run, without interest or forethought. I needed something in my belly, so I grabbed a protein bar or a vegetable drink. It served the purpose, although I derived no pleasure from it.